Last year, the amount of discouraged male workers grew 50%, meaning that not only are these men not working, but they have stopped looking for work entirely because they don't believe that they have the skills or qualifications necessary to land a job in their local economy, bringing the amount of men in their 20s who are not in employment, education, or training to 1 in every 10. But that doesn't mean that the other 9 are doing so hot either. Over the past decade, male enrollment at colleges dropped a whopping 20%, in contrast to an only 7% decline we saw in female enrollment. And if having bad relationships with work and school wasn't bad enough, young men's relationships with young women aren't doing so well either. About 2/3 of young men in America are single, and when you survey these people, over half of them say that they've given up on romantic relationships entirely. Marriage rates amongst young adults have dropped from 31% to 18% since the 90s, and almost half of Gen Z men report having no romantic or sexual experience at all, which is double that of previous generations who, notably, lived much more restrictive lives than Gen Z has. So who is doing well right now? Well, it might be your knee-jerk assumption to say women, obviously, but not really. While Gen Z women in cities are better educated, are earning more money, and report more satisfaction in their relationships than their male peers do, that does not mean that the girls are doing all right. See, there actually is a subset of men who are doing really well right now when compared to the general population. Men making above average salaries, gaining valuable romantic and sexual experience, who have lots of friends, are finding their purpose in life, and are maybe even getting married to one of those quote-unquote high-value women that the red pill subreddits like to glorify, all before he's even 30 years old. And those young men are overwhelmingly at traditional 4-year universities. So this begs the question, is the cure to male loneliness just going to a university? At least assuming that you take advantage of the school's mental health facilities, career services, clubs, and student life anyway. Well, that's what I'm going to investigate today, because spoiler alert, the answer is not a simple yes or no. It really depends on a few key decisions that young men end up making. And it's a lot to go over, so please be sure to like this video and subscribe if you are new, and let's just get right into it. Now, trust me, I can already see the comments that are saying, bro, are you really going to argue in favor of college in 2025? That place where idiots go to take out $100,000 in loans for an art history degree? That place where frat boys go on drinking benders for 2 years before dropping out? That place where some anthropology professor in a pink pantsuit is going to tell me that I'm evil just because I was born a white male? That college? Yes. Yes, I am. And I'm not even going to deny that the dark side of universities isn't real. It absolutely is. But I am going to argue that the current anti-college narrative is incredibly flawed and does a terrible job of showing the true cost-benefit analysis of doing something like going to a university. And not only that, but is being overwhelmingly pushed by grifters who want you to remain sad, lonely, and broke so that they can take all of the money and girls for themselves by fear-mongering around the dark side of college in order to convince you to buy their crypto course instead of making long-term financial investments in yourself. So let me be shamelessly blunt and talk about the dark side of universities. We're gonna talk about the debt, we're gonna talk about the corruption, we're gonna talk about the mythical DEI warrior who calls you a colonizer in your History 101 class, despite also being white herself. We're gonna talk about all of it so that we can demystify what the experience of attending college is actually like, to hopefully make it a little less scary, and to show that many of the proven historical benefits of attending university are in fact still relevant to young men, probably now more than ever. So let's start with debt. Now, I talk about this a lot more in my previous video, but just to summarize, according to the Federal Reserve, the median student loan debt is sitting right around $20,000 right now. Not $100,000, 20. That's less debt than the average American has on a used car in the United States. And over half of the people who have more than $25,000 in student debt have advanced degrees, like doctors, lawyers, and PhDs. This is also why we use the median when talking about these statistics and not the average, because there's a small handful of doctors and lawyers dramatically pulling the average up, so median is a much more academically honest metric to use when looking at something like debts. Now, if you go to a traditional four-year university in the United States, then it is very statistically unlikely that you're going to take out more debt than you can actually handle. And the data overwhelmingly prove this. Only 13% of college graduates from public schools are behind on their loans, and only 11% of graduates who went to private schools are behind on their loans. It's just not as bad as like these finance gurus on YouTube make it out to be. And not only that, but people who earn at least a bachelor's degree overwhelmingly report that the cost of their tuition was worth the money when they got into the professional workforce. But that is technically a self-report and is therefore coming from people's opinions. So if you want some harder data, then consider this. When you look at two people from the same socioeconomic background, say you're looking at two middle-class white dudes from Henderson, Nevada, the one who went to college will reliably earn 70% more in their lifetime earnings than the one who did not go to college, averaging a $1.2 million increase in lifetime earnings. Now, I'm no math genius, but I'm pretty sure that a $1.2 million increase in earnings is higher than the $20,000 to $25,000 of student debt that most Americans are carrying right now. And again, this is equalizing for socioeconomics. So we're looking at people with the same race, the same gender, the same age, the same just kind of general background overall. Really, where people run into trouble with student debt is when they either get some college or they don't complete a bachelor's degree. People who drop out, people who get technical degrees, or people who get associate's degrees overwhelmingly report that college was not worth the money. And again, I think that really lends itself to the financial problems that we see when young adults try to arbitrage their education to save money instead of just going for a more prestigious program at an established school with a good connection to industry and a good recruiting infrastructure. Kind of like how some people will refuse to move to the American coast because it's too expensive, even though the jobs there dramatically outpay the cost of living increase. We see the same thing with how people choose colleges. Every single day, high schools and parents are telling teenagers things like, don't go straight to a university, take concurrent enrollment in high school, then go to a community college, get all of your generals done, and then transfer up to a four-year university so that you can save a bunch of money on tuition for those first 2 years, and then you only have to take classes that are relevant to your major and that you're actually interested in once you get there. In theory, that is really good financial advice. However, in practice, that is almost never what's happening statistically and is very unlikely to pay off over the long term. Only about 1/3 of community college students ever end up transferring into a four-year university, and of that third who do, less than half actually complete a bachelor's degree within 6 years. So if you are an 18-year-old today and you enroll in a community college, then there is only a 16% chance that you will ever obtain a bachelor's degree and therefore make the cost of college worth it. And like, this does make me very sad as both an economist and as a higher education professional, because I wish that smart financial decisions actually led to good financial outcomes, but the data just doesn't lie. The stability and the resources caught up in traditional four-year universities, whether that's the dorms, whether that's on-campus student employment, whether that's internships, whether that's research, etc., 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 all kind of snowball into building a lot more social capital for young adults, and they tend to be caught up in much better connections to broader industry. And so traditional four-year universities just have a lot more to offer and therefore tend to be more worth the money in the long term when you look at society at scale. But that's enough data mongering for right now. You might be listening to this and thinking like, okay, I get it, the data's all well and good. Yes, college probably does make financial sense for most people, but life isn't just about optimizing optimizing for long-term earnings. I am nervous about dedicating 4 to 6 years of my life sitting in the hotbed of the contemporary American culture wars. I'm worried that my faith won't be respected. I'm worried that I won't be respected because of demographic factors. What if it's too liberal? What if it's too conservative? What if I get made fun of by my peers because of how I grew up or certain beliefs or values that I hold? And I get it. I hear you, I really do. To that concern, I have kind of 2 things to say. First and foremost, you can technically choose to go to a college that caters to your particular religion, race, politics, or really anything else. Like, if you are a Polynesian Mormon living in Houston, you have every right to go to BYU Hawaii instead of, say, Texas A&M. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that from a personal development standpoint, but it is an option. Beyond that, though, let me give you some reassurance and insight. I have worked at 2 R1 universities, one in a very red state, one in a very blue state, one with a religious majority, one without any majority, one that was urban, one that was rural, etc., etc., etc. And at neither school did I feel like there was any group of students who did not have places and communities where they belonged. Sure, when you go to any college, you're gonna see people walking around who look like these 2, both of whom are named Blake and neither of whom respect your life choices. But at the end of the day, most students, most professors, and most policies are pretty moderate and reasonable at most universities. People are going there to learn and to expand their horizons. And so you're far more likely to get tolerated for who you are on a college campus than you probably are in like a social media comment section, because there are just different types of people who have access to those spaces. So long as you are not an annoying anti-intellectual douchebag, most people are going to be cool with your existence. And so long as you have the emotional maturity to ignore the small handful of anti-intellectual annoying douchebags that you will inevitably encounter, then you're going to have a totally cool experience too. All of the protests and the violence and the radical professors that you hear about on the news are pretty consolidated to a small handful of universities. And these are universities who have just a little too much time, privilege, and historical political action on their hands. Like, most college campuses are very safe, moderate places. But all of that being said, I would like to remind you that stepping outside of your comfort zone and interacting with different types of people is, like, good for you. See, universities are really good with providing young people with something called social capital. These are connections, experiences, resources, and insights that allow you to go out and create a better life for yourself than you could have done without that experience. Having access to career fairs, being able to study abroad in Norway, being able to do undergraduate research projects, all of that is social capital, and universities are really good at curating social capital. In fact, that's quite literally what they were designed to do. And so if you grew up poor or rural, or you just want to step outside the limitations of wherever you grew up, then going to a university is a really fast and effective way to fast track that, which we will dive into specifics on here in a minute. But first you might be saying like, okay, social capital, I get it, that makes sense. But what about all of those people on Reddit or that I meet in life who majored in data science, computer science, graphic design, or anything else who just can't get a job right now? To that I say, this is a valid concern if, and I'm gonna give you some tough love here for a second, if you are the type of person who can't think for yourself, who just kind of does what other people tells you to do. Yes, we as a country filed way too many people into tech and data science programs over the last decade, only for those fields to become widespread victims of layoffs and automation. The cultural narrative in the 2010s was that these were going to be the high demand jobs of the future, and so we kind of grabbed every single awkward 17-year-old boy without a spine who was kind of good at math and said, hey young man, you should go major in data science, and untold riches and women will be waiting on the other side of graduation. It was really the whole, go west young man, haven't you been told? California's full of whiskey, women, and gold mentality. And that's the thing about societal narratives that don't come from real experts, right? Is that they're almost always wrong. I think a lot of people working in colleges 10 years ago could have told you that the shoe was about to drop on programs like data science and that they were going to become oversaturated and worthless by 2025. I really think that if you went back in time, people working in this industry would tell you that. And honestly, if I had to predict the future, giving everything that I know and everything that I'm seeing, I think that we as Americans are going to really regret how much we're sabotaging our young men by not encouraging them to make long-term investments in their financial future, especially as this problem continues to get worse. The best thing that you can do for yourself and your life is to make decisions for yourself. Like, sure, data science might be oversaturated right now, but there are still good, high-paying entry-level jobs in data science. So like, if you're a young adult with that skill set who's really ambitious and flexible, you could probably still make a good career in data science, right? The important thing is to figure out what you want to do, where you want to live, how much money you want to make, etc., 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 and then reverse engineer those goals back to where you are right now so that you can start taking effective next steps towards your goal, whatever that goal might be. That also gives you time to prototype that career before you go into it, taking classes, doing internships, job shadowing, things like that, so that you can understand what about a career field does or does not resonate with you, which in turn can make you more adaptable and better able to pivot whenever something bad inevitably does happen. Like, I've been laid off 3 times, and I am still doing perfectly okay in my personal and professional life. In fact, something like 73% of all college graduates end up in some type of different career path than what they originally studied in college. And that's okay. Like, it doesn't mean that their degree was wasted. Like, they're still earning an average of $1.2 million more than people who didn't go. It's just that their priorities and wants changed as they gained new experiences and insights. I'll give you a personal example. Once upon a time, my goal in life was to move to Honolulu. I don't know what it was, but 20-year-old me just really wanted to live on Oahu. I even applied to the graduate program at Hawaii Manoa and was given a full ride job offer in order to go there for my master's degree. However, being able to keep my then long-term girlfriend, who eventually became my wife, made that move impossible. So I chose her over Honolulu. But that doesn't mean that I failed in that goal. It's just that my priorities changed because I want to be with my wife more than I wanted to live in Honolulu. And I still to this day do not regret that decision at all. My priorities changed, and that's okay. Now, you might be saying, okay, dude, thank you for the career and the life coaching. But here's the thing, I am ambitious. I can think for myself, and I did get good grades in school. I'm not just some idiot deadbeat. So then why should I be using a school to launch into my future when I'm perfectly capable of finding success on my own? Why should I have to take general ed courses that I don't care about? Why should I have to join clubs? Why should I participate in casual dating? Why should I go drinking on Friday nights with friends instead of studying, working, starting my own business, or doing literally anything else that's more productive with my early 20s? The college scene is just too superficial and limiting to get me to my goals fast enough. To that, I will say 2 things. First and foremost, you are right. College is not for everyone, and I'm not going to pretend that it is. However, as any 30-year-old will tell you, once you turn 18, you are now playing very different games than you were in high school. See, being a successful teenager, depending on your personality, usually ends up being about either getting good grades, being popular, or being a good little subservient rule follower to your parents. All of that shit, however, goes straight out the fucking window the day you turn 18 years old. You are playing very different games as an adult. And most of the regrets that people have at the end of their 20s comes from them failing one of those games. People who are 30 and out of shape tend to regret it. People who are 30 and don't have a good job tend to regret it. People who are 30 and aren't married tend to regret it. Not all, but most people regret playing one game at the expense of all of the others. And so if you focus too much on, say, making as much money as humanly possible when you're 18 years old, there's a very good chance that your health and/or your relationships are going to suffer as you go through your 20s. And there is a good chance that you are going to regret that. And I think that's where I have the biggest issues with the anti-college narratives online. Because when you look at the things that are plaguing young men, poor physical health, poor mental health, poor relationships, or just like being poor in general in terms of not having enough money or career prospects, traditional universities are very well equipped to solve those problems for a significant portion of young men, because the entire culture around campuses is built to facilitate things like health, wealth, and relationships. Which is why I believe that as a young man in America, college is now more important than ever. I'm about to say something extremely problematic, but I think it needs to be said. If you are a straight young man, then one of the best reasons to go to college is because that's where all of the good women are. They are not on Tinder, they are not at clubs downtown, and they are certainly not making minimum wage on the work site like you are. Women who are smart, healthy, and come from good backgrounds are overwhelmingly spending their 20s at school. And the competition in that dating scene has never been lower. Young men are dropping out of school, young men are not approaching women anymore, and young men without degrees in big cities are earning less money than women are who are their same age. It is almost stupid easy now for young men to gain romantic or sexual experience in college because there's just no competition, and college campuses are still some of the only walkable social places built for young people in America. But it's not just about dating either. Like I said earlier, the amount of discouraged male workers around who have stopped looking for work in their local economy continues to rise every single year. And that's a serious issue that universities are uniquely qualified to solve because they have a complete monopoly over the entry-level job market. Here's the issue, right? Let's say that you want to break into business. Sales, marketing, management, doesn't really matter. You just want a high-paying corporate job. But anytime that you find a seemingly entry-level job at a corporation on LinkedIn, it asks for 3 to 5 years of experience that you don't have and that you can't get because you don't have any experience to get a job in the first place. This is the ultimate societal catch-22. Or is it? Put yourself in the shoes of a company for just a second. If you wanted to hire interns or entry-level professionals at your business, would you want to bother posting all of those jobs onto Indeed and LinkedIn, where you're just gonna get thousands of bot applicants and a bunch of shitty Canva resumes from people who are really just trying to make money to go to your trainings and quit anyway because American cities are fucking full of degenerates? No. You wouldn't. Not if you could just email those openings to your local university partner and then take a single afternoon out of the year to go to those colleges' career fairs and have them spoon feed you literally hundreds of qualified, eager candidates who are showing up with polished resumes, a smile on their face, and a suit and tie on. Universities make it so unbelievably easy for companies to hire quality entry-level employees that it's just not worth the time, energy, and money for them to attempt any other approach. Online job boards like Indeed are just full of bots, scammers, and a bunch of unqualified people who apply to literally anything that they see. Whereas university career fairs are full of America's best and brightest, who are taking classes, joining clubs, and doing projects that are giving them transferable skills and experiences that the company can count as experience experience when hiring them for entry-level roles. See, outside of a few licensing careers like doctors, teachers, and engineers, companies don't really care about the sheet of paper that university is giving people at the end. They care about everything else caught up in the collegiate experience that turns young adults into confident and competent working professionals. Now, at this point, a lot of people will tell me, like, listen, I hear you. I really do. The financial stuff makes sense. The relationship stuff makes sense. The social capital stuff makes sense. The job market stuff makes sense. It all makes sense. But I am worried about my mental health or my disorders or my disabilities and my ability to actually take advantage of college in an effective way, even if I am physically there. But let me push back on that, because for most people, college is probably going to be the only time and place in your life where you have daily access to so many world-class experts and facilities. Go to the clinics. Go to your career services office and have them build your resume with you. Go get medication if that's something that you need. If you do that, you can become as equipped to succeed as all of these other neurotypical, extroverted people fucking playing ultimate frisbee on Saturdays on the quad. Like, you can be just as prepared to succeed as all of these people if you take advantage of campus resources. And on that note, speaking of ultimate frisbee, one of the best things about universities is just how many clubs, activities, and overall facets of student life that they have to offer. Do you know how hard it is to make friends outside of a college when you're just an adult living and working in a big city? Crazy hard. And do you know how expensive it would be to go to a ballroom dance class, play adult softball, go to a museum, hit up a gym sauna, and attend a football game every single week? Pretty expensive. But if you do these things at a university, if you live on your own, if you study hard, if you get involved in activities, if you do some research or internships, if you go on dates, then you are going to be in the top percentage of men in America. Maybe not the top 0.001%, but certainly in the top 10. I want you to put all of those images that you have in your head of like super jacked millionaires going around in private jets and investing in Bitcoin out of your mind for a second and just look at me. I am not super conventionally handsome. I am not jacked. I am not a millionaire. And yet, as a 29-year-old, I have a good job. I live in a nice house. I have a hot wife. I have multiple male friends that I can hang out with any day of the week if I wanted to, and I often do hang out with them at least once or twice a week, alongside a massive portfolio of just other life experiences in general, all because I went to a traditional 4-year university. I just could not have created this life on my own. When I was 18 years old, I was working at a scrapyard on the outskirts of a native reservation in northern Nevada. I was definitely in the bottom half of men in terms of experiences and opportunities available to me. But I made the tough decision to take my life into my own hands, and I decided to move. I decided to enroll in a good school, and I decided to delay my career and my earnings for just a few years in exchange for curating an unknowably large amount of valuable social capital for myself. And I have never regretted it for a second, even when I'm making student loan payments. And like, sure, I could be in better shape, or I could have a better resume or more money, but like, I've got a good resume. I've got critical thinking skills. I've got financial stability, emotional stability, and a really good set of relationships in my real life. Things are pretty damn good, generally speaking. I don't suffer from the overwhelming majority of problems that other young men my age are currently suffering from, and I have university to thank for that. Which is why I believe that the cure to most of the crises that we are seeing with young men today could be solved if the young men who have at least a little ambition and a little ability to think and make decisions for themselves stopped it with the get-rich-quick schemes, logged off of Tinder, and just enrolled in a traditional 4-year university. I will see you in the next one.